Good afternoon, good morning, wherever you are. Welcome to episode 58 of the Leading IT podcast, hosted by Tom Leyden, CIO at Longview, and me, Josh Rubens, CEO at Empyrean. If you're new to the podcast, welcome to the family, and if you're a returning listener, thanks for coming back. The purpose of our show is for IT leaders to discover unique and valuable insights into current trends from both sides of the vendor and client paradigm. And we tackle relevant and time-sensitive topics like cloud, cybersecurity, infrastructure, AI, strategy, and leadership, and how to deal with emerging threats and opportunities. Now, today, we're really privileged to be joined by leading organizational psychology and change management specialist, Dr. Josephine Palermo, who's going to have a chat with Tom and I about how we as IT leaders can manage change in our ever increasingly complex world. Now, these days with AI and things that seem to be moving and changing and becoming more complex than ever, how we can successfully deliver these changes is going to really define how successful we are over the next 18 to 24 months. So g'day, Tom. I think it's an important topic and excited to have the chat today.
Thanks, Josh. Yep, looking forward to that. But before we start, should we talk about some of the news that's going on around the world in IT? Josh, what have you got?
Yeah, so first couple of bits of news are really about come from Amazon, from AWS. So one of them is that it was announced last week that AWS is no longer able to sell the VMware cloud on AWS solution. So now customers have to buy it through Broadcom or through Broadcom partners. So it's a pretty big change, bit of a slap in the face to AWS from Broadcom. I mean, Broadcom have been pretty unfriendly in this approach, in this VMware acquisition. They've really, put a lot of people offside. And the customers who have existing 1 year or 3 year subscriptions, so that'll continue to work until their end of term. But it's putting the whole solution in doubt. And something I thought was quite humorous was that AWS has posted a blog giving a step-by-step process on how to migrate their VMware virtual machines to native AWS workloads. So I thought that was pretty interesting.
Good. So, what are you advocating that customers start looking around, Josh? What are you saying here?
Well, I think if you are running VMware on AWS, I think I would be looking at my options.
Yeah. Looking at when your contract ends and making sure you got a competitive solution coming up, right? So I'm going to move out and talk about ChatGPT. The latest version was released last week, 4.0. So it's better than version 4, apparently. But I don't know if you're using it, Josh, but what I'm saying is that it uses the internet natively. So none of that, I don't know I don't know anything after 2023. It now searches the internet natively. And the results are, it's starting to become really compelling. So rather than browsing now, you can now just start using this thing directly to find answers for you. It brings together all the tools, the image generation, the DALL-E type stuff, the language translation piece as well. A lot faster than it used to be. I guess the reasoning is a lot better as well. So I think a lot of people are using it, particularly marketing type people are using it already. I think this has just become more and more a tool set people engage with, right?
Yeah, that was a big issue with ChatGPT. Was it only had data up until 2022? So now, yeah, that's huge. So that puts it in aligned with the Microsoft Copilot, because that was a bit of a selling point for Copilot. Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, it was. And then I think there's a question around, do you use ChatGPT or do you use Copilot? And I think a lot of people are using ChatGPT directly or natively or in the Teams enterprise version are saying, well, maybe I don't need Copilot. Maybe that's actually better on the side. That's interesting.
Yeah, it depends on the use case, really. If they're want to use it within the M365 ecosystem. Yeah, okay, that's exciting. Is it much faster, Tom, or they're saying it's...
Yeah, it is. Yeah, I'd say that. And the answers are just better, most frankly, as well, and more accurate. The better integrating the internet is a big deal, actually. It makes a big difference to your results.
Yeah. Yeah, that's pretty cool. And also, the other bit of AWS news was that their CEO was still saying that 85% of IT spending remains on premises. So
Yeah, that's amazing, isn't it? So people are
yeah,
still spending on infrastructure in their server rooms or data centers. All right. You're nodding your head going, yeah, that's great.
no, I'm not saying it's great, but it's true. But he's spinning it as obviously a big opportunity for them, and that AI workloads will increase spending in the cloud. Although I did see a article from CIO magazine last week saying that they think AI workloads will sort of revamp the whole on premises strategy. So
Yeah, well, I tell you what, this is the old story. And the reason why people have got it on prem is because it's cheaper, right? That's the number one reason why people have
yeah,
got it on prem. So is that going to change though?
well, I think if you think about the life cycle, so maybe you want to go to the cloud when you're doing a proof of concept because you can run it up really quickly and you want to prove the use case. And then once you've got it, once you know what you're doing and you've got it stable, then you might want to move the model close to where the data, particularly if the data is on premises, because currently the cost of those AI workloads on the cloud is extremely high. If anyone's tried to utilize a GPU on the public cloud, you'll know they make you essentially pay for it up front. So it's a lot cheaper to run it on premises. So I know that was sort of what I'm thinking, Tom, is that
The
people
same
might
story, right?
yeah,
It
they
hasn't
might
really changed.
no, so they might play around in the cloud and prove the use case, but then potentially bring it back on prem. That's for organisations who care about costs. There are surprisingly a lot of enterprises who don't care how much they spend and how much things cost, and that's fine. They'll stay. They'll stay in the cloud.
I'd love to work for them.
Yes.
And I'm going to move on. So I've been sort of immersed in sort of marketing technology and SEO world recently. It's really interesting to see what AI is doing in that space. So did you know, Josh, Google revenue, 80% of its revenue is generated by advertising. Did you know that? 80%
No.
of Google's revenue, 80% is huge. So they're under an enormous amount of threat. Their revenue's under an enormous amount of threat, particularly with ChatGPT coming on and
Mm,
people essentially doing their searches in ChatGPT, right? And this is why I think they were putting the internet directly into ChatGPT, blah, blah, blah. So there's no need to go and browse anymore. It's a massive problem for Google. So they're obviously trying to change that. They're trying to put AI into their browser and you'll see that when you search for something in Google now, it'll come back with that chat style answer. And their whole dream is that they should be able to answer your query directly in the browser, in that chat thing. So what does that mean for advertising? So they're trying to work out how to actually incorporate advertising within the AI stream, and then they'll still get you to click on something going through.
mm.
But it's huge disruption for Google at the moment.
Did I hear something like it was a 30% hit on their revenue or
So
search amount? It's been huge already.
it's been huge, right? And for a company that has 80% of the revenue from that stream,
Mm.
it's a big problem for these guys. However, I'm sure they're pretty smart, right? So I'm pretty sure that they'll get through this. I wouldn't be buying shares. I don't know you, Josh. Maybe not just yet.
I'm not in Google, as you know. Most of my shares are on the Microsoft site, so and they've been good.
Full disclosure.
Um,
Full disclosure. It's good.
yes, and as I said, we are not a advisory, so if anyone takes the advice, that's on you. Okay.
Good luck to you.
um, all right, and my last bit of news, which I'll do quick because I think we will attack this on a future podcast episode. Maybe the next one is that IDC is saying that the PC market is going to return to growth after 2 years of significant drops, and now I think it's been down like 26 or 27%. But a lot of that was because organisations overspent during COVID. They on notebook devices, so they're expecting it to have significant increasing that in 2025 about 43% of total shipments will be AI PCs. So what's changing is there's new processors. So AMD have got their Ryzen processors and Intel have got Core Ultra processors. So these have CPU as well as GPU, and now there's a new name, NPU. which is neural processing unit. So essentially we'll be offloading a lot of the AI processing from the CPU onto this NPU, and all the major vendors. So Microsoft with their Surface devices, and HP, Dell, and Lenovo are all coming out with a new range. And then the idea is that customers will be motivated to refresh to get into these new AI devices. So yeah, I think it's worth drilling into that, Tom, on a future episode and getting into some more detail.
Yeah, I think so. I think there's a huge question around, what is the value of those endpoints, those devices in the corporate space? How much should you be spending on these things? How often do you refresh your devices? And is there real value in the NPU, or is it just a gimmick? We'd like to know the answer to that.
Yes. All right, we'll attack that probably next time, Tom. All right, now if we can welcome our guest. So our guest today is Dr. Josephine Palermo. So Josephine is a seasoned leader, executive coach, and consultant, specialising in fostering strong leaders, teams, and culture in organisations. She's worked with hundreds of leaders to help them find untapped potential in their people, processes, and systems. She has a PhD, no less, in organisational psychology. She's also held leadership roles in both the public and private sectors. She led a $6 million program at Australia's largest telecommunications provider, which was about enhancing technological capabilities for enterprise customers. She's a director of Geared for Growth Consulting and a partner at 16 Conditions Australia. Josephine champions the purposeful shaping of business leadership and strong culture by enabling collaboration and high-performance teams. Her Amazon bestseller book called Rising to Feminine Power, The Lasso of Truth, and she has a podcast called Gears, Action and Growth, reflects her commitment to challenging traditional views on work and fostering a collective approach to leadership. So welcome. We're really honoured to have you with us, Josephine.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Josh and Tom. And I love that update that you just gave. It always whenever I listen to your podcast, it blows my mind. I come to you for all of the news, and yes, I feel very informed now. So thank you for that.
You can come back to Josephine anytime. That's absolutely fine.
We're very easily pleased, Josephine. So why don't we? So we mentioned earlier. So the problem we're trying to solve here is the exponential rate of change in technology. Now the new one is AI and ChatGPT and all the stuff we've been talking about. And poor old CIOs, IT leaders have been tasked with making this change. So maybe later on we can get into some recommendations around how they go through it. But look, to get us all on the same page, maybe why don't you sort of talk to us about what you think change management is?
Yes, and I might talk about strategic change, because I think of change management as small c change, whereas strategic change is where you're actually enabling transformation in an organization, and that could be digital transformation, but it could be transformation that touches every single function. And often when you change one thing, you do actually change things within the rest of the system as well. Whereas change management as a practice, or small c change, is the process you use to make sure that you've got adequate buy-in from stakeholders when you're really starting a change, all the way through to the end of that change, producing the benefits that you want. So there's a process and a set of methodologies that relate to change management, and it's a really important function, and it sits alongside project management. But strategic change is that leadership function, and all leaders need capability around leading change, and especially leaders that sponsor change. So there's two aspects to it for me.
Right, so it's pretty huge. So how come we rarely see it in IT projects in the cost model, or why is it so rare?
It's the bane of my life. I think that it has to be something that's factored in, and I was just sharing with Josh last time we met. EY has done some recent research on transformation projects, and Cotter back in the 70s found that 70% of projects failed. So they went out and did some research looking at thousands of organizations globally and asking a lot of IT directors and CEOs about their experience. And that statistic still stands up. About 70% of projects fail. And the reason that they fail is because at the project level, there are certain human factor processes or conditions that aren't set up. And so there are certain things that we know makes a big difference to project success. And in fact, it can increase the likelihood of going from failure to success threefold. And there are 6 things that EY identified. I'll tell you what they are. We can kind of play around with which ones you want to focus on. First one is purposeful vision. So any change has a future state, and you've really got to get that why in place. So the human mindset changes are required, and then you need leadership that adapts, particularly leaders who lean in and are constantly working on emphasizing collective effort around that vision. You need to have psychological safety where people are willing to speak up, they feel free to speak up when things go wrong. And in fact, the EY research talks about turning points in a project, and that leaders need to sense when those turning points are happening. And those turning points are maybe the first time you get a real niggle that something's not quite right, that perhaps the milestones aren't being met on time, or there's some problem with quality. And leaders who put their head in the sand at that point are guaranteeing project failure. So there are things we can sense, and you can predict when those turning points are going to happen. So we can talk about that. Then you've got to make it real with technology. So you've got to make sure that technology is brought to life for people in the whole business, not just your target users. It's in the whole business. Get people to invest in playing with the new forms. And we see this, don't we? We see, for example, the success of some of the AI models like ChatGPT. They've enabled people to play with with that sort of open AI. And of course, now there's this incredible buy-in because people are able to play and understand perhaps the potential of that change. The next factor is creating autonomy. So disciplined freedom, creating autonomy in the organization to experiment and shift into acceptance of that change. And then the last thing is collaboration. So co-creating new ways of working. And so those factors, it sounds like a lot of information, but even if at the beginning of a project we focused on 3 of those things, on the things that we know we need to focus on, and built those in to our change management and project management and leadership, because there's governance and leadership that has to be there, then we would actually ensure success. And I think the problem is we have a belief that success is about creating a roadmap and then doing stuff and making stuff and delivering along that roadmap. So we focus on getting things done and the transactions around that and sometimes we don't pay attention to the humans in the room or the humans in the organization.
Can I ask you a question, Josephine? So yeah. I'm not going to mention which customer it is.
Can I guess?
I'm not going to say. I'm not going to say. And it's not Tom.
That's good to hear.
Yeah, and it's not Tom. Where there is certainly a culture in the organisation around autonomy and collaboration. However, the issue is in that every meeting. So let's say you have 20 people in a meeting and you're trying to workshop requirements and move a project forward. Each one of those 20 people thinks that they are a decision maker.
Yes.
And they have the autonomy and the ability to make the decision. And most of the time, all of the 20 don't agree at all with each other. Yeah. So at what point do you, as a leader, have to, what's the balance there between mandating and going, right, we're making a decision here, we're doing X. Sorry, you guys. So what's the best way to address that?
we don't know how to do collaboration well, and that's why that happens, Josh. That's why you get 20 people in the room, either all wanting to make a decision, or 20 people in the room who are just there for the coffee. You get the opposite of that, where nobody wants to make a decision. So we don't do collaboration well because we haven't been taught to do it well, and we don't understand the science behind collaboration. Collaboration happens when you have clarity, role clarity around what are we here to do and who's got the accountability where. So those things, you work those out first, and then you work out the how. But in terms of what are we here to do and who's really got the accountability here? And also, what are we here to do? Because there are 4 things that can happen when groups of people come together, whether they're a team or a group. They can share information. They can cooperate on some task. They can coordinate, and that needs a little bit more trust, because when you coordinate, I might be giving you some resources, you might be giving me some resources. Or you can really collaborate, which means making decisions together. And so often we don't know where we're at in relation to that. We don't know what's required around those 4 things. And we don't have conversations enough about clarity. We have what we call a fast team protocol, which was based out of 6 team conditions. And that's actually research that came out of Harvard Uni, where they looked at surgical teams, because IT is important, but imagine you're on the surgical bed and the doctor's there and the nurses are there and the whole team is there and there's someone putting some anesthetic in your arm, and you want those people to work well as a team and understand what are we here to do and who's doing what, who's got the accountability, where does the buck stop, right? So they did. And often that group of people sometimes get together and they haven't met each other before. They haven't worked together before. So there was this fast team work protocol that was developed out of researching those kind of teams. Aircraft crew is the same. Researching those kind of teams. And what they found, it was simple. Spend the first few minutes of being together, even if you think asking everyone, what are we here to do? And who's accountable for what? And then how do we want to get there in this meeting?
Well, that accountability piece, and I think you're right. Like, who's got what role, and do we agree? Are we all clear on what role each person's playing within the room here? That's something that we often forget, and I think we're all about collaborating and sharing and being nice to each other. But it'd be nice to actually clarify who's got what role and what do people bring to the conversation as well. Also, let's give the opportunity to give people a license to speak about what they really know about and feel comfortable in that space as well. I think something's sometimes forgotten.
Yeah, exactly. That's absolutely right, Tom. And then you create conditions for psychological safety, because psychological safety should not feel like a warm bath. It should not feel like a kumbaya moment. If you feel like that in a group, it means something's wrong. People aren't actually speaking up. They're not saying, hey, Tom, I think you think that you're accountable for the thing that I'm accountable for. Or they're not saying, hey, Josh, you got to pull your weight because you're actually accountable for that and I'm doing your job at the moment. That is a good team when you do that respectfully, right?
Yeah, I don't see that happening in a lot of organisations.
Yeah,
Most people are afraid to have that. What is it called, microaggressions, or I don't know. I think you might be a meeting with HR. So how do we balance that? I can see a meeting with HR saying bullying, microaggressions, all sorts of things.
But we have to, if we're not being real with each other about the work. See, this is about the work. It's not about it's not about Josh and Tom. It's about the work we're doing. So if you relate it back to the work, I'm not criticizing you or your personality. I'm actually saying, in relation to this work, I had the understanding that you were accountable for A, B, and C. And I'm not seeing A, B, and C being done here. And then then I might say, what's going on? Rather than, this is where you move away from a blame culture. Rather than sort of strapping you across the back with a whip, I'm saying, what's going on? And then sometimes the conversation can be about maybe it's a problem of clarity. Maybe it's a problem of knowledge and skills, to Tom's point, but maybe there are other people in the room who can help with that. Maybe it's a problem of just maybe some barriers in the organisation that aren't being managed well. So there could be lots of things. So it's having an open mind around that, and not necessarily getting, I'm Italian. I always sound heated and passionate, but it's not necessarily using big voices to get it's actually about saying, we're really passionate about this. This isn't being done. What's going on? Let's have a real conversation about what's going on.
And how can we help as well? I think that's the other.
Exactly.
So you haven't done it. Well, what's wrong with you? And says, right, this is not getting done. You haven't done it. Why not? Let's really unpack that.
Exactly.
To help you get this done, because we're all vested in the interest of this project. Can I change the topic just slightly?
Yeah.
And then just back to the comment about the big vision. And I think there's some projects where someone, maybe a management consultant or someone within the firm, has stood up in front of hundreds of people and talked about the grand vision of the project. It's going to sound different for every person ever. Oh, it's going to be the best project ever. And then, guess what? 12 months later, he's been fired. They've changed half the team. It's all going horribly wrong. What happens between the big vision and the disaster that typically follows that?
And haven't we all been part of that in organisations? There are turning points that relate to when the vision is going to be realised. So yes, absolutely. At the beginning, the CEO's optimistic, everybody's optimistic. We're talking about benefits, we're talking about dreaming. We dream big, we're encouraged to dream big. It's appropriate, right? Maybe 12 months in, there are some real problems. The operations functions are, chomping at the bit because they're saying, hey, we have to take our resources back. You've gone over time, or there's something wrong, or I haven't, the benefit you promised me. How am I going to deliver that without the resources to do it? And so there's suddenly the reality of now is competing with the aspiration of the future, that vision. And but we could predict that, couldn't we? We could, because particularly with, maybe you've got a transformation program or even just a change that's going to take 12 months. You can predict that in the halfway mark, at around, say, 6-month mark, people are going to start to have some cold feet. They're going to start to say, hang on, this is what you promised me. This isn't going to deliver or problems arise, like we've got a data ingestion problem we didn't realize, or something like that. So something happens at that point. We can predict that. So what I'm saying is that predict that, create in your time frame, create some signature moments at that point. And it might be that you need to get CEO and leadership team to recommit and revision. It might be that you need to get everyone in a room to have a real conversation about what's really happening. It might be that you shift, or you're unearthing problems that perhaps weren't apparent when we were all dreaming big. So you shift into that, and then you explain the shift. So you're bringing people along with you because you've predicted at the 6-month mark, this is where we're going to have to do a bit of extra work.
Yep.
We can predict that.
So that's excellent. I think the straight talking thing, I think, is a massive issue in our culture in general, and definitely within corporate organisations. There seems to be an allergy to, because you're right. If you do it correctly, then people shouldn't get what they do. That's maybe their problem.
Yeah.
Just holding people accountable and being direct in a respectful,
exactly,
compassionate way is the right. But I see. I mean, we're fortunate in a bit, we're only 33, 34 people. Like, we can be quite, direct. But in a lot of corporates that I've seen and places I've worked, it's really difficult to do. So so I think so what you're saying is, if you're thinking about, okay, in 6 months' time, security is going to get involved, and operations are going to get involved, and security are going to come in and try and kibosh the whole thing.
Yeah, exactly.
So how do we? Let's talk about that.
Yeah. So you've predicted that. So you've
Hopefully.
started to engage security early. You've
Right.
started to bring them along. They've co-created some things to mitigate some of that blowout at the 6-month mark. You're deliberately, because what happens, we've got a condition that we often miss when we're working on projects. The team's working away, they're putting a lot of effort in, they might be doing the right things, but they're ignoring the rest of the organization or how they're seen within the rest of the organization. We call that supportive context. You've got to give the project and the project team a supportive context, which means making sure that you're talking to people about what you're doing and why you're doing it on an ongoing basis, not just at the beginning, at the kickoff where everyone has, everyone's feeling nice about it. You're continuing to have that. You're sensing what's happening in the organization. So you're bringing people in to really have that conversation. And it's not about telling them, it's actually, you want to hear from them. How's this affecting you? What are we doing here? How could we do it differently so that you get what you need, right? So it's that there's and again, if we predict it, we know that that's actually going to be important. There are sometimes things happen and we haven't predicted it, and we haven't, there's something that happens from left field, of course. But again, it's about bringing people into a room. And I always love the easy questions. If this was easy, what would we be doing to help you with, solve your part of the world? What could we do? What's the easiest thing we could do to help you solve that part? So, a lot of the work I do is just really bringing the right people together at the right moment and asking really easy questions of each other. So, and maybe training some people on how to talk to each other around that. But it's not rocket science. It's a shift in focus around what's important. I was talking to someone today who said that in her project, often, the update meeting, you're doing a sprint and you're having update meetings, and the sponsors or the business owners come in and they want an update. And it's often a kind of trial by fire. They're sort of, they're directing and saying, well, I haven't got this done. Where is that? Why is that late? Nobody is going to get what they need in a meeting like that. Nobody at all. And so it's about, so again, meetings like that need to be reframed to, this is actually a place where we help each other achieve a shared purpose. And that purpose can change, but we all agree on what the purpose is. And this is a meeting where we help each other do that. You're informed coming into this meeting. So we expect you to do the cognitive pre-work before you come into this meeting and look at the sprint plan and the report card and know where things are at and ask open questions when you come here. So it's most people want to do the right thing, and because everybody's trying to succeed in their own way, but they don't have mechanisms for working together. They don't know how to work together. And
Can I so let's go because I think like everyone kind of got a feeling for what they need to do. And we've all learned from the horrible mistakes we've all made over the years. But often being involved with projects where the classic example, boards approve some sort of business case. Great.
Yeah.
So the guys have run a million miles with this. They're happy as. No one's communicated willing to anybody about what's going
Exactly.
on. 6 months into it, it's costs gone out, resources have been it's complete. It's a disaster, right? And they haven't followed what everyone knows they should have done, the textbook. But if you come in and salvage those problems, you come into these projects and go, so where's the communication? What God, how did you guys even get here? What do you do at that stage, when you go and discover the massive mess that has been created?
So it's lovely to be asked to solve messes. I would prefer to be asked to set things up for success, but sometimes you do go in and you solve. So often, again, it's bringing people together, and I don't do a retrospective on what's gone wrong because people are often anxious about today. You don't have to look at the past. We understand it, right? And there's no point blaming this person versus that person. It doesn't get you anywhere. So what I do is I actually come in and we reset the purpose. All right. Okay. This is the current situation. Let's reset. What do we want for the next 2 weeks? What do we want for the next 2 months? And then we work on how we're going to work together to get there. So reset is purpose, not big vision. What's this team going to do? What's the purpose of this team to help resolve the chaos that we're in? What are we going to do? And then who's doing what? What skills do we bring? What knowledge do we bring? And how do we leverage it across the group? Do we need to bring anyone? Because sometimes at that point, you need to bring new people in. So you have a real conversation about, do we have the right people here in the room? Who else needs to be here? Often, when you work in emergency situations, crisis situations, the war rooms, this happens because people are they're all focused, laser focused on the one thing they need to do to make this right. You kind of get to that point. So what do we need to do? And then there are some things there's some just really easy methods that we use to get people on the same page and keep them there. So for example, we restructure the norms of the group. We restructure the way we talk to each other. We put reminders and reinforcements along the way. So for example, we set up different types of updates and team catch-ups to reinforce a new way of talking to each other, and then you have progress coming in. And so, because at that point, that's usually happened because people haven't been talking to each other, or they haven't been telling each other the truth about a situation because there's poor psychological safety or blame culture, or they're blindsided because they haven't been collaborating across multiple functional areas, and they haven't in their hearts, they've been trying to do the right thing, but they haven't understood the impact on another part of the organization. So you just then it's actually a really good moment because people are very motivated to get something fixed, but the kind of coaching or intervention you need is structural. It's not motivational. It's not, let's look back, let's do a retro, see where we went wrong, what did we learn, how we can do it better. That's motivational coaching. That doesn't work at this stage. You've got to do some structural things.
So, Josephine, I feel like we could talk to you for hours, and we've already going on time. So, what I wouldn't mind doing, if you can, is, as I mentioned, a lot of our audience is IT leaders.
Yeah.
So, let's say, for example, the business has decided to implement AI,
yeah,
and they've now been charged with implementing Copilot, a chatbot.
Yeah.
All right, over to you. So now, change management. How do we make this a success?
Okay.
Just
So we first work with the leaders, and let's get all the leaders in the organization on the same page around their aspirations, around the vision, around what they want, and maybe even some different use cases around how this could work. And then particularly get really clear on who's going to do this project and who we need. And I always opt for multidisciplined knowledge in the room. So even if you think you don't need someone from that function, it's, you might pull them in and test whether they add value, they can just sort of test and learn around that. So agreeing on particularly the benefits. So agreeing on the benefits, on the vision, but agree on who needs to be in the room, and then agreeing on those milestones and the shorter milestones, but particularly how are we going to get buy-in right across the organization? How are we going to, and working again with it might be a steering committee, but it could be the CEO and leadership team, or a steering committee, but whoever's accountable for the narrative, that's a continual process, not just at the beginning. So I would work with setting up a group of people who are in leadership positions, who have decision-making authority, who are going to stay connected with that change or stay connected with that project, and be thinking about the ways in which they're communicating the change out from a leadership and impact perspective. That's really important.
How do we, I mean, a lot of these things, I mean, Tom will, I think, agree, is that, we want to do it, now it's IT's problem. Over to you. We don't want to go into meetings. You guys make this work. How do we, I don't know, Tom, would you agree that happens every now and then? So I can't hear. No.
We've lost Tom.
We can't hear Tom. We'll go back to you, Josephine. Yeah. So what if they just don't want to? They don't want to engage. They're too busy, or yeah, no, this is your problem now.
Yeah. And the thing is, sometimes they don't want to engage because they don't see a vested interest, or they don't see that they have a shared accountability.
Right.
So, and sometimes they don't. Then you don't necessarily, it depends. If it's a big change, they should be there. So that's a conversation at the leadership level. And, sometimes the project, particularly change projects that require a real change in the organization, leaders can't they can't obfuscate their responsibility. It is not just the IT director's responsibility to make sure that change, occurs seamlessly. They might be responsible for the machinations, the how, and maybe some of the resources, but it's not just their responsibility. So often we go into organizations, and as change managers, the first thing we do is widen the pool. And I always look to which leaders are responsible, and do we have the right leaders responsible?
It can be hard. I mean, they're senior than you, and if they just don't want to, there's not a lot you can do, really, is there?
No, but sometimes what I'll do is I'll have a one-on-one with a leader, and I will ask them why they don't think they're responsible. What it is about this that because sometimes it's about they might have uncertainty. Sometimes they don't know enough. They don't have enough knowledge to know how it impacts them, and therefore, they're not going to prioritize it over other things.
Right.
So this is why I keep talking about strategic change. It has to be the person you bring in to manage your change has to be the right person who can talk to your senior leaders. And I'm not saying challenge them, but ask them questions and be open and curious about what's going on there. And look, if there's a change going on that doesn't motivate other leaders to be involved, then your story's not right, your vision's incorrect, or maybe you shouldn't be doing it.
Yeah.
Tom, did you want to come in?
Yeah, well, I think maybe you shouldn't be doing it. Is a really interesting point. And sometimes we'll just go headlong down a project and realise that actually this is not the answer to the problem we thought we were solving here. And sometimes you pull the plug, or you need to stop what you're doing and reassess why you're doing it. If you have those situations where you've just had to go, whatever problem you're solving, you're not doing it. How do you do that? Like, how do you stop the project halfway through?
That takes strong leadership. It really does, because people have a vested interest in the role. They have a vested interest. You've got to, they've invested resources, and also there's an emotional tie. So you've got to manage and deal with that emotional tie. And sometimes, for some things, you need a radical change sometimes to get people to stop. I often go deeper. Because sometimes when you ask people to stop, they say, we couldn't possibly stop that. Why?
Yeah.
Because we'll impact this outcome. What makes you think that? So just kind of really drilling down into why they have an emotional, and sometimes it's about them, sometimes it's about a belief system. So they are, you'll get to the bottom of it. So usually it's about an inability to let go, because there's a strong belief that letting go will cause some kind of catastrophe, not necessarily in the organisation, but with me and my identity and who I am.
Or if you staked a lot of personal, currency in it, there can be
ego.
So getting back to this sort of use case, so it's really getting the buy-in, understanding the use cases, setting the milestones. What's next after that, if anything?
So once you've set the milestones and you're in implementation, in delivery, it's really important for the different, sometimes you've got different delivery teams, really important for them to collaborate. And so you've got to set up, again, team-based structures where they are communicating more than you think is necessary, and not communicating. This is why people don't want to be involved, because you get them to come to a meeting and you ask them to give an update. Maybe you've got 5 delivery streams. Each one needs to give an update. Everyone else is bored out of their brain. That's so boring. Why couldn't I just read your pack?
Yeah.
But imagine this. Flip that meeting. nobody goes through their updates. They provide them beforehand, and everyone is expected to read them beforehand. The meeting is then maybe shorter, but what you do in the meeting is you bring a problem, and everyone's involved in creative problem solving. I would go to a meeting like that.
Yeah, geez, wow. That would reduce 80% of meetings, Tom.
Yes.
Sorry, mate. Yes.
Wouldn't it be good if
meetings.
people did their homework and actually read the papers before the meetings? I really like your point before about getting the non-technical, the business leadership to buy into the outcome and then be part of that solution and part of making that happen. I think every IT leader goes, well, we'd love all that support and help, but often for all those reasons you highlighted, they just don't do that. As an IT person responsible for delivering this stuff, at some point you've got to call it out, right? Say, you know what, this person's just not on my side.
That's right.
That's really hard to do, right? It's a really difficult thing to do.
Particularly if they're the CEO.
Yeah,
absolutely. And what I work a lot with those executive leaders. So, because you've got a team, you've got the CEO and direct reports. Often the IT director or IT executive is part of that team. But often those people at that level, they are looking down too much and not across. Mm-hmm. So they are, looking at, and they might be doing great things at the team level and down in their organization, but they're not looking across, and probably they're a bit critical of what they see in other functions, but they're not even asking a question about it because they believe it's not their accountability. It's actually at teams that work really well, those top teams that work really well, are whereby everyone has a vested interest in each other's success. I mean, if I'm the IT director and I don't care about process and service delivery, the customer end, or I don't think that's my problem, then you're going to get really bad customer outcomes.
Yep.
100%.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So I do a lot of work. So if for the IT directors out there, it's about get to know the people in your peer group. The CEO will thank you for it, by the way, because that's what the CEO needs the team to do. Really get to know, if you getting to know people on a personal level is one thing, but within the team, ask questions, ask open questions of each other, just really understand. And if you don't understand, you have a coffee with that person. I need to understand what you do because I'm not sure. The hardest thing for leaders to say is, I don't know, because they think they're expected to know everything. It's the hardest thing. But it's about relationship building at that level, or at least having an opportunity to be curious about each other.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, that's fantastic. Fantastic, Josephine. I think we've run out of time. We'll have to get her back, Tom. I think that's fantastic. I feel like we could talk to you for hours.
Yeah. We've just peeled the onion.
Yeah.
I wish I had this conversation 20 years ago, to be honest with you. It's like, where were you 20 years ago?
I think a lot of our clients need you, Josephine. That's all. That's all I'll say.
And it's not rocket science. It's not even. It's not.
We all know it's not rocket science, but for some reason it all goes wrong.
That's right.
Glad you're here.
Yeah. No, Josephine, do you want to maybe give a plug how people can find you?
Yes.
Your podcast, your book,
So I think the easiest place to find me is Josephine Palermo. I'm on LinkedIn, and that's probably the easiest place. And you can also go to 6teamconditions.com, which is number 6, the word team, and then conditions.com. But probably the easiest way to connect with me is LinkedIn. And I love connecting with people, so drop me a line.
And Palermo's Palermo.
Yeah, like the capital of Sicily.
Yes. Yes. Is that where you're from?
My mother's from Sicily, so yes.
Well, thanks so much, Josephine. It's been
a pleasure.
Fabulous having you on board. Yeah, really good. We'll definitely have to get you back. And thank everyone for listening. We hope you enjoyed our episode. If you did, please give us a 5-star rating so other people can find us as well and, become up to date like Josephine is. If you want to reach out to me, you can also get me on LinkedIn, or you can email me at jrubens@empyreanit.com.au. And thanks very much for listening. See you, Tom.
Thank you. Thanks very much, Josh. Thanks, Josephine.